We're going to mute everybody. Don't take it personally. Welcome to Jay here. Who else we got? Everybody else. We're going to mute everybody. Don't be insulted. And we got with us a special guest, Rabbi Hirshel Gurary. So first and foremost, Rabbi, first of all, thank you so much for joining us. We know it's a busy time. Yontif is over. You got your students going there at Penn State. And thank you. That's our first statement. Thank you very much for joining us. Really, really appreciate it. So let's get started. How long have you been representing Chabad at Penn State?
So we joined the Penn State Chabad team. We're starting our 6th year now, I believe. And Chabad at Penn State started in 2001 by an amazing couple, Rabbi Mrs. Moretsky. And I guess a little over 5 years ago, we were brought down to run the undergrad division. So we're the Chabad focused primarily on the undergrad. And yeah, it's exciting.
Wow. So how does it start? How does it work? So you arrive there. As you said, there was already a Chabad presence. But when you first show up at school, obviously the students don't consciously think that they're there to meet Chabad. They're there for their studies. They're there to get their degree. They're there maybe for a little freedom, a little frolicking. How does Chabad on campus attract young, suburban, excited kids to take some time and come to Chabad? How do you get started?
So we had it great question. We had it a little easier because Chabad had a presence here before. So a lot of the legwork, we already had an established student group. So we're already a recognized group on campus. And we also, we had not a lot, but very few students. So our first Friday night, we had 4 students. And we also got names. We get names actually got names from Jeff Seidel, if anyone knows who that is. So he gave us a few names. We had 4 students, and then a mixture of friends bringing friends, term on campus called tabling, which means you put a table out and you table. So you meet people that way. And then it started slow. We had 4 students, then 12 students, and then you get your crew. And then our first Rosh Hashanah, which was a month in, I think we had 23 students. And then it exploded. Now, not COVID, but with COVID, last week we had between in-person and to go, we had for Friday night close to 80 students. So we had 25 in person, but the rest to go, whatever the math is.
Beautiful. So how many students in total, and how many Jewish students are there in Penn State, the undergrad, the grad? Give us some numbers here.
Undergrad, I think, I don't know about this year, I think it's a little less this year, but in general it's around 45,000. More people that live here. So there's 40,000 locals, 45,000 students, undergrad students, around 5,000 grad. So the grad school is not that big. The number thrown around for Jewish students is 4,000 to 6,000, around 10%. I would argue it's a little less, but enough to keep us very, very busy. Baruch Hashem.
And can you give us a rough estimate? Let's talk about pre-COVID times. About how many students do you interact with? Again, obviously COVID has thrown everything upside down, but about how many students does Chabad interact with on any kind of regular basis on campus?
So interesting. I don't think COVID affected the amount of people we interact with a week. It just changed the way the interaction is. I would say math was never my strong point, but I think around 150 to 200 on an average week student engagement. Again.
So what do those engagements look like? You mentioned about the Rosh Hashanah, you mentioned about Friday night dinners. Give us what would go on in Chabad on campus on a regular day. It's not Yontif, it's not Shabbos. What are some of the programs? What are some of the interesting things that you do to get the attention of these hyper-scheduled young kids?
Hyper-scheduled, huh? So I can only talk for Penn State. So in general, we have some social events. Our biggest social event is Friday night dinner. That's the biggest social event. We have just last night. So last night we had a hot wing night, hot ones it was called. I'm not sure exactly what it was. The board ran it, and there was levels of hot wings and a trivia game. I was taking care of the kids. I don't know exactly what it was, but and then after that we had a board meeting, and then I gave a class and my wife gave a class, 2 separate classes. So that was just last night. And then tonight I had a like a JLI type of class called Sinai Scholars. So we do a lot of classes. Long story, but there's a Chabad resident, like doctor resident, who moved to town. The same guy happened to buy his tefillin 8 years ago, his first pair of tefillin, and put on tefillin for the first time. Crazy story. Anyway, so his wife works for us now, student engagement director, and she gives classes, a lot of one-on-one meetings throughout the day. And then there's different students come to Chabad for different reasons. So some students, like the learning. Some students come to for a sense of community. Now in COVID, a lot of students come. We're one of the only places in town that are doing in-person events in the name of religion. So all safe, outdoors in our tent, no walls, social distance, and masks, and we're following the rules. But so people come for different reasons, and we try to cater to all those different needs.
So allow us to back up a few minutes. I know you a little bit. You grew up, you went to Masifta here, you lived the Lubavitch life, you grow up, you get married. How did you decide, or why did you decide that you wanted to make it your life's work to be in a college campus, not to go to Afghanistan or to be in some small community or a big community? What is it about working with college students that really spoke to you and motivated you to make that your shlichus, your life's mission?
So it's a great question. When I was 20, so actually my first interaction of Miftzayim was on a college campus. So I grew up in Postville, Iowa. I'm a Midwest boy. And there's only religious Jews in Postville, Iowa. So for us, offering someone to put on tefillin or to shake a lulav was like it was like a special treat because it didn't exist in Postville. So on Sukkot, we used to travel 2.5 hours to Madison, Wisconsin to stand on campus and shake lulav with students. That's actually my first.
Rabbi Matisov.
By the Matisovs, right in front of Walgreens over there. But anyway, when I wanted to go on campus, I as a yeshiva student, when I was 20, I went to help out a Chabad in GW for a Shabbos. Loved it. And then I went a few times to Arizona State University. I love that.
That's Rabbi Shapiro, right?
No, that's Flagstaff. ASU is Rabbi Shmuel.
It has to be a tachtel. It's actually there's a zoning ordinance that every college campus has to have a tachtel. That's a separate discussion.
Yeah. So I went there, and I love that college kids have energy. And are on a point of their life that they want to be inspired. They're on their own, and they're trying to figure themselves out. So I thought I enjoy the energy of it. I guess I still have a lot of energy. When I was a little younger, I had even more energy. So
what's the culture of the Jewish students at Penn State? Do they come from observant households? Do they come from secular households? Are they Northeastern? Are they from all over the country, over the world? Are they Israelis? Got to be Israelis, but what's the culture of the Jewish community in Penn State?
Great. Vast majority are, what's this called? East Coast. Vast majority East Coast. Many. The joke in Penn State is everybody's from outside Philly. That's how they introduce themselves. Where are you from? I funny story. I went on a fundraising trip to outside Philly. I thought there was an area called outside Philly. And I didn't realize that from one house to another house is like a 2-hour drive. Drive. This outside Philly place is very big. But anyway, tri-state area, Pittsburgh, stuff like that. You have a few sprinkle Florida, a few California kids, a few Chicago kids. We have freshmen from Rabbi Flickstein's Chabad house.
Yeah, Wilmette from Wilmette Chabad.
Very involved. But that's mainly very, very few. I mean, almost nobody, like no modern Orthodox. I don't like labels, but there's no modern Orthodox kids there. I mean, I know of one. Very, very secular. Everyone's very secular, Reform, conservative, unaffiliated. Maybe Hebrew school, but not much more than that.
How would you describe the college students? You say you've been there for about 5 years. You get a feel for students. What drives college students today? Are they more interested, they just want to get their degree and go out in the world and make money? Are they more sort of curious about social justice? Are they looking just for the freedom of being in college? Can you give us a feel for what are the college students in this time, in your own experience? What is the tone of their character?
Great question. I don't know if I hope Penn State's not the judge. Um, I call we're an alcohol school with the football problem. No, I'm joking. No, students here are great. Geographically, we're in the middle of a cornfield. And because we're like this town called State College in the middle of absolutely nowhere, I don't know if you have this experience, but growing up, like when you're in camp, you have people in camp that will like wear pajamas for 2 months, not because they wear pajamas for 2 months at home, but it's like a different atmosphere. So because we're here, we're not a very political school at all, and not a very like social justice. You have all those. I mean, we use biodegradable stuff now because one student was very passionate about that. So why not? I mean, it can't be a bad thing. It's a good thing. And you have that, of course, by young students, and you have the people who are very motivated for the degree. But there's an overall like a little bit more laid back feeling over here because like there's this like campus bubble that like a little bit removed from reality.
How does that affect you and your family? I mean, you are a couple of years older, obviously, or you got your kids there. There's no kind of frum kids around. There's no hater. I mean, give us a sense, like, what is it like for you personally to be in that kind of environment? You know, you say jokingly an alcohol school with a football problem, but that dynamic is not Postville. It's certainly not Crown Heights. It's not West Rogers Park. What is it like to be out there in the cornfields for yourself, just at a personal level? How do you maintain your connection? How do you deal with it?
So personally for me, you know, you got to improvise. One of the big blessings of COVID is that I'm very proud that I started, we call it the Chabad campus-based medrash. And we have a morning Hasidus class with, our Rosh Hashiva is the Chabad of Emory, not Emory, Chabad of Cornell.
Rabbi Silverstein.
Rabbi Silverstein. So he's our Rosh Hashiva. He gives a Chassidus Rambam shir that I don't go to. It's too early in the morning. And then Chassidus, and there's a halacha shir twice a week by another shliach, a Lakota Sicha shir. So you can't give if you're not inspired. And, you know, you got to make time to sit and learn and work on your own inspiration in Judaism, or else it doesn't work. So that's something that I try to put a lot of focus on. For my kids, you might know we hired this amazing girl, and her friend, my sister-in-law, and they run a little preschool. There's 4 from families in town, so that's working out really, really, really nicely. And it's you have 6 freezers in the basement for kosher food. You know, figure it out.
And what have you learned from working with these students? I mean, it's a whole different experience for you. This, as you said, you grew up in Postville. Everybody there was a Shabbos observant Jewish people associated with the slaughterhouse and so on. What have you learned from dealing with these students who come from such a different background and such a different mindset in their lives? How has it affected you at a personal level?
I think, you know, the message of the Rebbe, how, you know, every person is a diamond and every person has infinite value and every person has what to contribute. You know, you taught about that, you think about that. And then when you're on the ground and you see people, and, you know, us Chabadniks are officially non-judgmental. I think all people are judgmental, and working through that and realizing there's certain students that like you come in and, oh, this student's never going to do anything. A lot of times you write off students, like, yeah, they'll come for chicken soup, but they're like, you know, they'll never take a class or they'll never learn. Like just in the back of your head, you make these assumptions and you get very, very surprised very, very often. And the beauty of people, you know, so it's very humbling and it's a very gratifying experience.
Now, we know that on college campuses around America, there's a lot of issues about anti-Semitism, there's BDS. Have you had this experience? Have you had incidents? Have you had any kind of vandalism? Have you had anybody make you feel less than welcomed? Do the students feel any of this kind of tension, or is that something that's maybe you're immune to, maybe it's more the media making it up. What kind of experience, if any, have you had like that at Penn State?
Yeah, so I only could talk for our school. Again, cause of the bubble mentality, um, it's a blessing and a curse. But anyways, there's not that much BDS on campus. Um, at least actively, at least in the last 5 years. Anti-Semitism, I mean, is everywhere, but it hasn't affected too much. A few years ago, my menorah got stolen, and got stolen from my house, and it was placed 2 blocks away at a fraternity, at a Jewish fraternity. So non-Jewish guys stole it. Anyways, long story short, we found the students who stole it, and taking from the Rebbe's approach of education, we kind of pressed charges, but very mediocre charges, whatever they're called, misdemeanors, not a hate crime. I didn't want to destroy their lives. And I insisted on meeting with the people who stole the menorah, and meeting with their fraternity. And the story is still going on because, very long story short, I get a call from one of the kids who stole it a month ago that he was doxxed. Doxxed means that he was put on the internet saying that he did anti-Semitism and this is where he works. Basically, people wanted to pressure him out of his job. And he ended up, he called me. I said, Kyle, you did a mistake. You're a great guy. You went to the Holocaust Museum. We're friends now. I think this is disgusting. There's so much to take what was done to me and make such a post. Anyways, then 2 weeks later, Delaware Chabad got burnt down. And he called me. This kid called me. Didn't text me. I was very inspired. People don't call these days. Everyone texts. He called me and he said, I'm so sad what happened to your, colleague. And I want to make a donation. And this kid who stole my menorah, because I dealt with him like a mensch and educated, he joined our Chai Club, $25 a month. And he said, my dad also wants to give a donation. So now his parents actually drove up to apologize to us. After his kid stole the menorah, he drove up 4 hours to apologize. And I called the father. Anyways, we spoke. He said, I'm retired. I have a foundation. I'm going to send you a donation. I don't know what he was going to send when. Anyways, 2 weeks later, came just at the right time. Rabbi Chabad has a story. The bank hit zero and didn't know what to do. Anyway, I got a call the next day, and he gave a very sizable donation, $5,000. And he said it's going to be annual. So what I learned from that story was what happened was a sick thing. They stole my menorah, and stealing menorah is an act of anti-Semitism. But because we dealt with it with a level-headed way, I filed charges, but we pressed charges, whatever it's called. But we also dealt as humans and education. There's certain people that are just don't know what's going on, and if you deal with them menschlich, then a beautiful thing came out of it. Not saying certain people just have to be, destroyed. I'm not saying that you don't have those fellows out there, but that's just my only experience. Last thing I would say is there are students who had a student on a Zoom call who had an Israeli flag behind him, and another student posted to the class, "Will you please take down this apartheid, I don't know, thing?" The student didn't. And he complained to the dean, and they were very supportive. So his flag's still up, and he keeps his camera on. Overall, the school has been unbelievable, very, very supportive.
But this story is amazing. I mean, this story has to be out there about how you turned around a negative. The kids steal your menorah, and now you've as you said, that's an amazing story. You got to get that story on. We're having Rabbi Posner from Chabad.org on. Maybe we won't mention it to him. Or you mentioned about JLI. We're having Rabbi Ephraim Mintz on, from the director of JLI International. This is amazing. That story is a mouth dropper. That's a Pine holiday card. That's a beautiful, beautiful story. Wow. Okay, question. We have people here on the call who have children in college. Everybody knows somebody. What would you recommend to parents when they're sitting there, a little boy or girl off to college, and the kids, he's all gung-ho, but they're inside, they're already homesick. How can they encourage their children to go to Chabad, whether it's at Penn State or any of the campuses that has a Chabad presence? What would you recommend to a parent or an uncle or a cousin or a friend, how can they get the kid who's, he's worried about his studies, he's worried about his football problem, and so on. Maybe Yiddishkeit is not at the top of his list. What recommendations can you make to parents that they can make to get their kids to possibly walk in the door?
So great question. Very, very important question. It's a question I get from parents I have parents of freshmen. My kid's there, get them involved. I see what you're doing. So I think it's two things. I think is number one, you have to know what your kid wants. But I would imagine most kids going to college, especially if they're not going with a large group of friends, are looking for a place to find friends. So if that's your that's your selling point, is tell them at Chabad there's so many like-minded Jewish kids out there. It's a great place to find the community, find friends. There's no dress code for Shabbat dinner. You could go in your jeans. Like it's very laid back. A lot of people have like this perception. You go into the rabbi's house, you have to put on a 3-piece suit. Freshmen, it's chilled, it's relaxed, it's more of a social atmosphere. And then through that, they'll get involved in more programming. And I can't stress this enough. If you're bringing your child to campus, bring them to Chabad. If you're coming for a Friday night, go together. The success rate of people who come and stay is amazing. But the biggest challenge is getting them through the door. So be creative of getting them a way to meet the Chabad shliach or shlocha. Either go to Chabad or kudos to Rabbi, I forgot what's Rabbi Flickstein's son-in-law?
Rabbi Moshe Teldin.
Yeah, so he, with this girl, he sent a mezuzah with her, and he said you have to contact Chabad to hang the mezuzah. You can't do it yourself. So
these guys are so clever.
So that was a great trick, and my wife went, because hanging a mezuzah is like putting a seatbelt on. You don't have to be a rocket scientist. It's very easy to explain, and you could Zoom call to hang a mezuzah. But he said, no, you got to get the rabbi. And if you don't know, okay, so the rabbi has to come. I sent my wife because it's a girl. I didn't send my wife. My wife went. And now she comes regularly. So you have to find a trick, a way to try to get them through the door or get them to meet the Chabad Rabbi Rebbetzin. And last point I will say is Chabad Shluchim are dealing with hundreds of students in certain campuses, and it's hard to think of everybody at once. So be a nudge. Every few weeks, if you know your kid's not involved, reach out to the rabbi. Did you see Jackie? It's her birthday coming up. You want to send her a chocolate cake? She's not feeling well. Could you send her chicken soup? This is our job. And be a nudge. And if you're a nudge with the donation, it usually goes a long way. No, I'm joking.
He's not joking. He is joking, but I'll say what you can't say. You want someone to take care of your child. Think about what would we pay for someone to take care of our children. So you could send them a check. Just to share another quick strategy, I have a friend and he sent his daughter off to school. And I said, the rabbi there, he's all alone. He can't get any chocolates. If I buy you some chocolates, can you deliver them to the rabbi? So anything you can do, like you said, to get them to have that first interaction. You bring them in the door and the shliach will dazzle them and they won't want to leave. Rabbi, I want to thank you so much for spending this time. And I do want to thank you. My daughter, Razy, is there at Penn State, and it's been a wonderful experience for her. And we appreciate that. Our Chicago pride that we sent Razy off there. You got one more quick story that you can share. I don't know if you can top that stolen menorah and the donation and the turnaround, but maybe give us just one little vignette, one little taste of something that goes on that we can relate to. Think about a young college student coming from a secular upbringing there for their education, for a little liberty and freedom, and how Chabad has been able to reach them. Can you give us one little quick story to take us home?
Yes, I'll tell you one last story. It's not so much with the I tell you two things. Number one is that, right now we're working on Tishrei just happened, and we had thank God, a very successful fundraising, and we want to send a newsletter to our donors to just let them know. And we need to come up with some stories. And the reality is that every interaction is a story. It's hard to make it, and some people are creative to make it into stories, but we have a student here, and I'll share a different story. We have a student here who just came tonight. She started I told her if she keeps kosher, she could raid my freezer whenever she wants. So every few weeks she comes and she fills up a bag with chicken and meat and whatever. So she's doing kosher. This girl came from a broken family. Her father's alcoholic, divorced. when she came into Chabad, she was scared of her shadow. Like you couldn't, just on a personal level, you couldn't talk to her. Now she's a member of the board. She's a leader on campus and thing. So it's not a story. It's just an
life saved.
Yeah, thank God. But I'll tell you a quick story of a very important story. Yeah, I see. Mel, you have a question?
Yeah, I do. Could I, Rabbi, ask you a question?
We're bringing.
Rabbi, I'm a lawyer, so I'm interested in this. The young boy that took the menorah, and you say you press charges, whatever happened with his case? And the reason is I'm saying a wonderful gesture you could make would be to tell the father to initiate with the court to have that record expunged.
Yeah, so what ended up happening was, no, I really appreciate you said that. What ended up happening is they did a type of charge. I'm not a lawyer, so I forgot what it's called. But they ended up doing a certain charge that if they do certain community service hours after a year, the record's expunged.
Okay, now, there is, like supervision is what they sometimes call it. But even though they say it's expunged, it often isn't. They drop the charges. So it's a good thing just to check on it, show the parents you really appreciate, and find out. And if the kid has a record, even though it's, so if you go to get a job, it says it's expunged, but it's still there, real expungement, it takes it from the record. It's like it never happened. And then he can honestly answer the question, I've never been arrested, I've never been charged. That's in Pennsylvania, I'm sure it's the same as here.
Cool. Okay, I will definitely look into that.
Expungement.
That's definitely important. Thank you for that. I'll do that. Last quick story is, so a few years ago, so one thing unique about Penn State, it is a public school, but it's a state school. But even though it's a state school, they have a building on campus called the Spiritual Center. And it's privately funded. It's an interesting way how they get around the thing. It's basically a center on campus for all religious and spiritual groups. And Hillel has their offices there. We do our Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur there. So anyway, the director of this department, his name is Bob Smith, and Bob Smith from Pennsylvania.
Sounds like a name you'd make up to be the director of
it. He said he's had cops come to his house multiple times to arrest Bob Smith. It was the wrong guy.
Who's this? Mrs. Smith? Yeah, sure. Okay.
So anyway, so it was a year into after we were here. So I guess that makes it 4 years ago. And we had a meeting in the office. I had a meeting in the building. And after the meeting, my wife and I were there. I said, hey, let me introduce you to Bob. So I went to Bob, and I didn't really know him well. I just knew he was in charge. It's a good guy to know. And I said, I just want to introduce you as my wife, Miri, and blah, 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 blah. And my wife asked him, I guess, a question about where he's from, or ancestors. And he's like, well, my grandmother ran away from Germany with, my great-grandmother ran away with my grandmother from Germany, and they were Jewish, and this was their last name. And the way he describes the stories, I saw a twinkle in Rabbi Hirsch's eyes. Now, to be honest, what was going through my mind at that second is a few years earlier, I took a resolution that wherever I go, I'm going to carry my tefillin. Now, it's nighttime. I only had my tefillin because it was show and tell for tonight's class. That's what's on the table. But anyway, so I had my tefillin with me, but in my mind, it was like a lag. This is a director of a department. I was still new on campus thinking that directors are scary people and whatever. But should I ask him for tefillin? Shouldn't I ask him? Knowing myself, I'm sorry, would have asked him, but my wife beat me to it. She's like, oh, Bob, you want to put on tefillin? So I put on tefillin with him. Shema, quick tefillin, like a quick on-the-fly tefillin. And that's it. We left. I told him it's his bar mitzvah. That was the end of the story. Anyways, that night I get an email from him saying, Rabbi, I want to thank you for introducing your wife. And thank you for the bar mitzvah. I've been smiling ever since. Could you please explain to me what happened? So English is not my first language. I'm not very good at typing either. So I told him it's hard to explain an email. Let's meet. So we met and we had a fascinating conversation, and that led to many, many more conversations. He now puts on tefillin every single day. He started wearing a yarmulke on campus. It's amazing. Priests stopped talking to him. It's pretty unbelievable. He has a mezuzah on his door. and he's one of my strongest advocates on campus, both, helping for, when things come up, and having his department sponsor different things. He sponsors a trip to the oil twice a year. He doesn't sponsor it. Any student group could get funding, but he funds it. He came to the oil with us. He came to the kinnis with us. So it's amazing what a mitzvah could do. Because if I didn't have my tefillin with me, it would have been, he's Jewish, nice. I maybe would have followed up later. I surely would have followed up later, but it wouldn't have been the same. So if any of you have tefillin or any other mitzvah you cherish, don't be shy. Make sure to share it, and amazing things will happen.
Beautiful. Love you. Rabbi, thank you so much.
Thanks so
for
much.
spending the time. I know it's late.
Can I say one last 30-second story?
Please.
So I tell everybody that if you're ever stuck on the 80, come visit, because why else would you come to Penn State? So I always tell people, stuck on the 80, come visit. A year ago, I get a call. My wife gets a call. So my wife's from Toronto. So before COVID, we would spend summers in Toronto, and my son would go to a play group. And when we left the last summer, not this past summer, the summer before, my wife told the playgroup teacher, if you're ever stuck on the 80, come visit. So she gets a call one random night and says, you guys are on the 80, right? Yes, my sister is stuck on the 80. Her car broke down. Could you please, anyway, they were 20 minutes away. It was a family driving from Cleveland to Lakewood, so we picked them up. Anyways, if you're ever stuck on the 80 or not stuck, we're right off the 80. You are always welcome to come visit.
Thank you. Hirshel, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. We know it's late there, and I'm sure you got a big day tomorrow for your base medrash. So thank you, 1,000 thank yous for spending this time with us. Hatzlacha Rab in your work. You got
Amen.
Beautiful stories. Keep them coming. We're real excited for you. So thank you to everybody. Remember, tomorrow night, everybody, Thursday nights, we do a little parsha. And next week, we're going to start a new program. We're going to be going over what are the basic books of the Jewish library, from the Chumash all the way through the Medrash and the Talmud and so on. So see you all tomorrow night. Thank you, Hirshel. Really appreciate it. Good night, everybody.
Thank you. Good night, everybody. L'chaim.
L'chaim.